This is The Whole Truth, brought to you by the Greenville County Democratic Party. From local city councils and school boards to the South Carolina legislature and the nation, we provide a clear-eyed view of the whole truth surrounding the decisions, the policies, and the politics that have a direct impact on your family, your neighbors, and you. In this episode, we have had the great pleasure of hosting Dr. Annie Andrews, a strong candidate who has announced her campaign to be elected as the U.S. Senator for South Carolina. She has provided her precious time to us over a video conference call after having just the night before joined the Greenville County Democratic Party in Greenville as guest speaker for our monthly meeting. Here are our hosts, the chair of the Greenville County Democratic Party, Stacey Mars, and the third vice chair, Charles Morris.
Hey guys, thanks for being with us today. We got a couple of things that we are so very eager to talk to you about. And the first one is the special elections that will be coming up in December, in case you didn't know about it. So it seems the Republicans are dropping like flies, right, Charles?
Yeah, it seems like none of them actually want to work in the State House. They want the title and then leave.
Right. No, it's something like that. But the first
or they do
is
highly illegal things and then they have to leave, but never mind.
Okay, I don't think that's what happened this time, but yes, that has definitely happened before. This time, though, Senator Roger Nutt, who is the state senator for District 12, he resigned on August 11th when he found out he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so. In the dead of night, the Republicans decided that they were going to get Representative Bobby Cox to run in his place, and he's out of District 21. So he resigned that very same day to run for the seat. But this past week, we just found out that he is not going to run for the seat anymore. So that leaves a lot of questions, but it also leaves room for people to run for Senate 12. We need a Democrat, and also seat 21, House seat 21, because we are not sure if he is going to withdraw his resignation or not. But the filing period is open and it is closing quickly. So what I find interesting, Charles, is that Bobby Cox resigned to run for the seat and then decided that he was going to back off of that. And it makes you wonder why. What happened?
It's bizarre. So he immediately resigns his House seat, declares his intentions to run. He lines up Senator Roger Nutt's endorsement, the senator who had to resign, which unfortunately his was due to an Alzheimer's diagnosis, and we hope he's doing well. And then he says, I'm just going to read his Facebook post here. After much prayer and reflection, I have decided to suspend my campaign and not file for the office. In recent weeks, unexpected work responsibilities and a demanding travel schedule have increased significantly. Well, what changed, Bobby? Weren't all those things happening anyway? It's bizarre.
That part.
The whole situation is bizarre.
It is very bizarre, but we probably won't get answers, but what I'm hoping we will get are candidates for Senate 12. We know that the Republicans are going to have a primary for Senate 12 in that Lee Bright, who is a former senator, and Hope Blackley, who is an ex-Spartanburg County clerk, are going to run. I'm sure others are probably expected to run, but those are the two that we know of right now. However, on the Democratic side, we still need someone in that district. And like I said before, we need someone in House District 21. So this is for the people who have said, what can I do? How can I step up? How can I serve my county? This is one way you can serve your county by running for office. And so, if you are looking to, and this is my plea, I know I'm supposed to be talking to you, Charles, but right now I'm talking to everybody else. Come talk to me. Let's talk and see what we can do. We definitely need Democrats running against Republicans, whether it's a special election or a general election. We need you.
Please, if you are scared about what's happening to your country, if you're mad, if you're frustrated, whatever, please step up. We need somebody to step to the plate, because we can sit here and talk all we want. but somebody has to be willing to step up and put themselves out there and run. And that's a big ask, and we understand that. But you will have a lot of support, starting with me and Stacey.
Absolutely. And speaking of elections, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette, let's talk about that one.
So obviously, there's a governor's race in 2026, and the Republican field is it's got a lot of people in it, and it's varied, and it's kind of whack job central right now. But our esteemed lieutenant governor, who I don't know if anybody has seen or heard of anything from her in the last 8 years, but she officially declared her campaign and had a kickoff event right down the road from us in Greenville, which is kind of especially disturbing. But she is clearly running to be, I don't know, Donald Trump's right-hand woman in South Carolina. She's essentially running on his platform. I think I saw campaign posters that said, "Keep South Carolina great." I think we can read into all the dog whistling that's echoing off of that poster. So
Right.
that was kind of disturbing to see. But yeah, she wants to end the state income tax, expand school choice, because man, the Republicans love school choice. Which is just code for I don't want my kids going to school with other black and brown kids. Roll back business legislation and take a hard line against woke corporations. What is a woke corporation, Stacey?
You know, your guess is as good as mine, Charles. Because of what? Like they want to give women jobs. Oh, that's woke. I didn't know that. Wow.
I want to make sure black people aren't kept out of management. Man, that's very woke.
Right. Like, oh my God. Like that sucks. They don't want gay people to get paid. Oh, okay. That's a bit much there for me. I don't know. She's I just think it's funny that she is going full on MAGA after having been so quiet for the past 8 years, like literally nothing from her in 8 years. And now all of a sudden she seems to have found her voice. I mean, is that woke that she's now all of a sudden, a woman is now all of a sudden speaking up or running for governor? Lots of questions on that one. Lots of questions. Absolutely.
It begs the question, Stacey, how can you run on this kind of platform as a woman when it seems like the end result is your rights are taken away?
Right. Exactly. So I'm just kind of, the other thing that I thought was pretty funny is the ending the state income tax. I don't know if any of you follow Representative Justin Bamberg. He talks about it a lot on social media, but apparently it was the Democrats' idea to end the state income tax. So the fact that the Republicans and she specifically is picking up this mantle, it's just really, really funny how these things happen and that it's bad if we do it, but it's okay if they do it. She's interesting to say the least. It's funny to me that Governor McMaster has not endorsed her, or has he?
I don't think he's officially endorsed anybody. I think our wonderful governor is, he's how do I say this politely? He's taking his orders from the Orange Man up in Washington, and he's not going to endorse anybody until he does.
He's going to wait for Trump to
endorse
her and then decide. But I mean, that speaks volumes to me, right? Like, this was supposed to be your right-hand man for 8 years, and you don't come out to for her.
Or has she just been completely ignored like Trump does the vice president?
Yeah, that's also a thing, too. Like, who knows with these people? They probably don't even know themselves, if we're being honest. So, yeah, we'll see what she brings to the table. I mean, clearly, I think Nancy Mace is losing her juice because she can't get people to show up. So we'll see.
Did she have any juice?
Let her tell it. She did, but when you get when only 8 people show up to an event, Not so sure, Nance. Not so sure.
Well,
You
that was
know,
pretty funny when she was supposed to have 100 people there, and there were 8 people. She had to cancel the event and do a private one-on-one with the people that were there. So,
a private. That's what we're calling it now. You know,
okay,
I
Nancy.
wondered if it still went on. I was like, a Democrat would have just done
No,
it and called it what it
exactly.
was. So, yeah, but we'll see how if the crowds turn out for Pamela. I just don't think they have anybody that is like that has that Donald Trump personality that they're looking for. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people in South Carolina, the Republicans, are looking for, and they're just not going to get it because Alan Wilson's not going to be that. Ralph Norman, I mean, oh my God, he's not going to be that. Nancy Mace is probably as close as it comes, but I think she almost crosses the line. Like you can almost say she's, I don't want to say crazier, but wilder. We'll go with that.
Well, I think
Than Donald
that's
Trump.
the trap that Republicans fall into, and this happens all across the country. They trip over themselves trying to appease Donald Trump, and they feel like the best way to do that is to just act like him. But what they don't understand is whatever appeal that man has, which clearly he does, nobody else has it. You cannot emulate that particular brand of crazy. You just look crazy. And Nancy looks crazy. And Pam is going to end up looking just as crazy. I know she's trying to put a pretty little dress on the MAGA movement and, put her little South Carolina twist on it, but I think she's just going to end up looking just as crazy.
I agree.
So now, here are the chair of the GCDP, Stacey Mars, and the third vice chair, Charles Morris, with U.S. Senate candidate Dr. Annie Andrews.
Okay.
I'm recording, so thank you very much, and let's get it going.
All right. So tonight we have with us Dr. Annie Andrews. We're excited to have you. Thanks for being with us. Annie, but before we start and, really talk about your platform, we just want to talk a little bit about the shooting that happened in Minneapolis today at a school. I believe the children were in chapel or praying, and somebody came in and shot up the school, killed 2 kids, I believe, injured, 17 others. So we already see it's the beginning of the school year, and we've already had one mass shooting. I saw you talk about it a little bit on your TikTok today. Could you just talk about it a little bit more?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I had a busy past couple of days. I was in the upstate. We were all together earlier this week, and I've been missing my kids a lot. And then I woke up to the news of this shooting, which, as someone who in the past has been a very active gun violence prevention advocate and gun violence prevention researcher, I'm not surprised to see these headlines, because until we change the gun laws in this country, we're not going to change the headlines. And, this is a tragedy like every child who is shot and killed in this country. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for children in the United States, the leading cause of death for children in South Carolina. And what frustrates me so deeply is we know what the solutions are. It's not a matter of not understanding what laws need to be passed, nor is it a matter of not having enough Americans who want these laws passed. The majority of Americans want common sense gun laws passed, like universal background checks, secure storage laws, red flag laws. The only place we don't have the moral courage to pass these laws is in Washington, D.C., because of career corrupt politicians like Lindsey Graham, who care more about keeping the NRA happy than they care about keeping American children alive. The 2 kids who were shot today were 10 years old and 8 years old, as I understand it, which are the exact ages of 2 of my 3 children. And so it's gut-wrenching. As an American parent, it is heartbreaking, devastating, maddening, frustrating, and motivating. I mean, our kids deserve so much better. Y'all heard me speak earlier this week. You know why I'm in this fight. I'm in this fight for America's children and South Carolina's children. And this is just one of the many ways in which elected officials like Lindsey Graham continue to fail our kids.
Amen.
Dr. Andrews, it is certainly disheartening that this continues to be a uniquely American problem, right?
Yes.
What based on your experience as a pediatrician, what has inspired you to run for the U.S. Senate?
I mean, I boil it down to two things. It's my role as a mother to my own three kids that motivated me to be braver and bolder in my quest to build the future that they deserve and every child in this country deserves. But working every day in a children's hospital is also incredibly motivating to get a seat at the table where decisions are made, decisions that impact South Carolina's kids and families. You know, when you work at a children's hospital, you take care of kids who don't know where their next meal is coming from, kids in mental health crises who can't access mental health resources in their community, kids whose parents can't afford their prescription drugs like their insulin or their asthma inhalers, kids who spend the night in their hospital rooms alone because parents are working multiple jobs, including a third shift job, just to pay the bills at the end of the month. And then, of course, it's the children I've cared for who have been shot. So seeing that every day motivated me to find solutions. And I spent time in Colombia. I realized not enough folks were fighting for kids. Similarly, paid attention to how South Carolina's congressional delegation, minus Jim Clyburn, continue to fail South Carolina's kids. Realize that if we want to get these policies passed that benefit America's kids and families, we've got to get involved in politics. So that's what pushed me into politics, because I realized I can have all the answers as a pediatrician and a researcher, but until we elect the right people, until we engage in the political process, we're never going to elect the right people, and our policies are going to stay on the desks of Congress people like Nancy Mace and senators like Lindsey Graham, who frankly don't give a damn.
Absolutely. I find it funny that you say, you realize that politics was the only way you were going to be able to change, because so many of my friends are like, oh, I hate politics. I'm like, well, politics is life. It determines pretty much everything, right? And so whether you're, a business person or a doctor or, a stay-at-home mom or just a mom, period, like, politics is life, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how, as a mother, your experience as a mother, how that informs your approach to policymaking? I know we've talked about it, how as a pediatrician it has informed your approach, but can you talk about it like just from a very personal standpoint as a mother?
Yeah, I mean, it really changed my strategy and my bravery more than anything, because, I have my entire life identified as an introvert, a rule follower. I'm not a joiner. I don't like to walk into rooms full of people I don't know. That makes me uncomfortable. And yet I shed all of these insecurities to become a political candidate because my children expect a brighter future. They deserve a brighter future. And as a mom, I'm just willing to do so much more than I ever was before I became a mom. I don't think you have to be a parent to care and to engage effectively in politics. But for me, knowing my background, my personality, I never would have been brave enough to do this or motivated to do this or have this like internal drive and passion to do this if it wasn't for my three kids, because I reevaluated everything when I became a mom. And just, I have three kids, and my youngest was born 6 days before Donald Trump was elected in 2016. So it was a very eye-opening moment for me as a mom of a brand new baby girl. And in that moment, I just knew I was going to have to find a way. So it does affect the way I think about policy and, my desire for more affordable childcare, higher quality, accessible public education, accessible, affordable healthcare, urgency to address climate change, action on gun violence. But more than anything, my role as a mom has changed my willingness, my character, my just how brave and bold I have become, because I am a mother.
So
Dr. Andrews,
I'm
it's
sorry,
funny to hear you.
Charles, can I ask her just one question? Because I thought that was interesting that you said that you had a lot of insecurities before you decided to run or in deciding to run. What would your advice or encouragement be to people who are insecure about it, who are scared to do it? Because we're living in some times right now where we are absolutely going to have to step out of our comfort zones. So what would your advice or encouragement be to those people who have it in the back of their minds, but they're a little scared to do it?
It's a great question. And first and foremost, just do it. This moment is so urgent. We cannot let this moment pass us by. We have to be brave and bold. We expect our children to be brave and learn how to hide from bad men with guns when they're learning to read and write. We can push ourselves outside of our comfort zones. And if you all knew me, anyone listening knew me 10 years ago, you would understand that you are fully qualified to do this, because I was not an effective public speaker. I didn't know how to fundraise. I didn't know how to command a room or communicate clearly in venues like this or on cable news or use my social media effectively. I've learned all those skills because I care so much about the problems I'm trying to solve. So anyone out there who has any itch to run, now is the moment. We saw the results of the special election. Was it in Iowa last night?
Yep.
I mean, and we've had one in South Carolina, these huge swings to the left. Now is the moment, especially if you are a young person, let us pass the mic to you. You are fully qualified. Folks in the Greenville County Party can help you along, can teach you what you need to learn. Organizations like Emerge can help those women out there thinking about running. It's just you are fully qualified. God, we need you. If you listen to what's happening in Columbia and in city councils and county councils across the state, you'll realize we need reasonable, logical, pragmatic leaders who actually want to solve problems.
Stacey was reading my mind there. Dr. Andrews, it's interesting to hear you speak about these insecurities, because you walked into that room last night filled with hundreds of people who were there to see you, quite frankly, and you stood up and gave a very well-received message that was very positive and very hopeful. And you actually got a standing ovation, which was very cool to see. How do you plan to stand out in this field of Democratic candidates, win the primary, and take the fight directly to Lindsey Graham, when, quite frankly, we have an atmosphere in politics now where it seems like memes and trolling is more important than policy?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we have some of the worst of those in South Carolina who are more focused on posting memes on social media and, attacking vulnerable populations, getting on cable news, than they are on actually delivering for South Carolina. Yeah, you're right. I mean, my life has been quite a transformation to go from someone with all those insecurities I described to someone who could walk into that room. And, I don't get nervous before you pass me the mic anymore, and I've heard Kamala Harris say this, when you know that your message is so important and you believe in it so much and you want to communicate it to the audience, that's all that matters. And that helped me in the process of running for Congress before, and just putting in the reps and doing the practice made me a more effective, more confident public speaker. And I think that, my passion can command a room because it is just so authentically me. And that's how you get these passionate, captivating public speakers. And it's all just coming from inside of me. So your question about how I'll set myself apart in the other Democratic candidates in this primary, I think first and foremost, it's about doing the work, not the fun work of last night of showing up into a room full of people and, getting a standing ovation. That's the fun part. The hard part, the unglamorous part behind the curtain, is the hours and hours and hours on the phones fundraising, because South Carolina deserves a candidate who has the ability to raise the millions of dollars that it will take to hold Lindsey Graham accountable. Lindsey Graham would wants nothing more than to have a Democratic opponent that has no money in the bank. And I wish money wasn't in politics. I really do. I wish we could get dark money out of politics. I wish we had public campaign financing, because then I could do more of what I did last night and less of what I've been doing all day today on the phones. But that's just not the way the rules are written right now. So we deserve a candidate who is committed to doing the work. And I take the same approach to the fundraising part of this campaign that I took to medical school. I didn't sign up to medical school to slack off and maybe fail. I didn't sign up to run for office to slack off and do half the work. So I'm out there doing the work, and my finance reports will reflect that, have already reflected that, and that's what South Carolina deserves. So on top of that, I'm going to be everywhere I can be, communicating my message and my passion and my hope for a brighter South Carolina.
I love that you. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Stacey. I was going to say, as a doctor, as you mentioned, you've directly witnessed those struggles that families have just paying for basic health care. So what specific policy measures do you plan to champion to make sure that everybody has equal access to health care, especially children?
We're going to have a lot of rebuilding to do after what the Trump administration has already done to attack our nation's healthcare system. First and foremost, we're going to have to rebuild Medicaid or something else like Medicaid that can serve vulnerable children who are living in poverty, patients with complex chronic diseases, patients in nursing homes. We're going to have to rebuild the system that we had before. But my hope, my glass half full hope, is that we can rebuild something that is better than what we had before the Trump administration got their hands on our healthcare system. A fully funded Medicaid program or something even better. I think I talked about this last night, a national federalized program for healthcare for all minors in America. We support our aging population once they've left the workforce with the Medicare program. Why don't we invest in the health of children before they enter the workforce? Because they're going to be healthier in the workforce then, and then they're going to have fewer chronic conditions for when they're on the Medicare program. So it would be a cost-effective approach to improve the health of every child in South Carolina and every child in this country. So I think we're going to have an opportunity to think really big about what we could do to make our healthcare system more accessible to more Americans. There's some really practical things we can do to lower the cost of prescription drugs. The way we price prescription drugs in this country compared to how they do it in most European nations is honestly just bananas. And it's because of big pharma and their influence on politicians like Lindsey Graham. So we need to get serious about addressing. And the Biden administration did a great job of, capping the cost of insulin and lowering the cost of out-of-pocket cost of prescription drugs for folks on Medicare. But there are very simple policy solutions. We just need more leaders who will enact them. And then finally, really my number one policy priority is to pass an expanded, permanent, fully refundable child tax credit. Because when we had one and when it went into effect during COVID, it lifted millions of American children out of poverty. And that essentially would address many of the things I talked about that I saw in the Children's Hospital every day. And, it expired, and we just lack a broad bipartisan support for an expanded, permanent, fully refundable child tax credit. It actually came up for a vote several months ago, and essentially all Republicans voted it down. And that would be just a really simple solution to provide immediate relief for all those families we know in South Carolina who are struggling to figure out how to pay their bills at the end of the week or the end of the month.
Absolutely. It made me upset to see that tax credit expire when it helps so many families. And I know with you being a pediatrician, you've probably had to deal with children who have mental health issues and things of that nature. So if you will just speak to that for a minute in the ideas that you have, maybe to expand mental health support for children and families, especially in underserved areas, because we know those are the areas that really can't afford it. They probably don't even have insurance. And the last thing on their mind is getting mental health support for them and their children.
That's right. It is always the last thing on their mind. And it is, I think folks don't understand how dire the situation is when we talk about the mismatch of need for mental health services and the actual supply of mental health professionals in the state of South Carolina. It's not unique to South Carolina, but like almost everything, things that are bad in other places are worse in South Carolina. And as someone who worked in the Children's Hospital in the Low Country for 15 years, I can't tell you the number of times I would take care of a patient who would get admitted after some self-harm behavior or some thoughts of suicide, suicidal ideation or attempts, and we'd medically stabilize them. And so many of them would just sit in the hospital and wait and wait and wait because the psychiatrist had determined they weren't well enough yet from a psychiatric perspective to go home, but there was no bed for them in the very limited inpatient psychiatric facilities that we have. So that's like the most acute part of this problem, because we have patients taking up hospital beds, not getting psychiatric care, waiting for a bed to open up. And then, much broader than that, we just have a lack of resources overall. We try to refer these patients once they're leaving the hospital to find a counselor, a therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist in their community. And it's nearly impossible to do that. And again, back to my frustrations as like a problem-solving person, there are policy solutions that could fix this problem. And those include incentivizing folks to go into mental health care professions by providing loan repayment, by, encouraging them to come work in our rural underserved areas so that we can bulk up our mental health services. And the reason one of the main drivers that there's such a paucity of mental health professionals is because of the way our insurance is structured. So many insurance plans don't, if they, the ACA helped, but they don't cover the full breadth of mental health services that so many of these kids and young people need. And so, if folks don't have insurance, they're not going to seek the services. And so it's really hard from a business standpoint for a mental health professional to make it work when our insurance system is not built to support the provision of widely accessible mental health services. And, you walk into one public school or one children's hospital, and it is so apparent that the need is just growing and growing and growing. And our kids deserve so much better. And we've got to elect more problem solvers who will get serious about addressing problems like the mental health crisis in South Carolina, rather than, just like catering to our current president.
Oh, you said a word on that one. So it's not really about reinventing the wheel. It's about really fixing what we already have in place and making that better, rather than trying to go into left field and come up with something that may or may not work.
That's right. That's right. We know the answers to so many of these problems. We're just in South Carolina stuck in this Republican supermajority environment where they continue to point fingers at all of our problems. Like, I don't understand why we need a Doge committee when they're in charge, like they're doging themselves. Like, make it make sense.
Right.
Like, like all the problems we have in public education and healthcare access, in poverty, in gun violence, like we need to blame the people who are making up the laws. And it is Republicans. Yeah. They are the ones holding us back. And I don't know how they have the audacity to look into the camera or to talk to an audience during election season and pretend like they're offering solutions. Like, these are your problems. Like, right. You have the power to fix them. Just go fix them.
Right. They talk about small government, but yet they create more red tape, more bureaucracy, and then more craziness. So, yeah, right. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's big, we investigated ourselves and found nothing wrong energy when it comes to that. You mentioned underfunded services for mental health. I think it's clear we have the same issue in education, particularly in rural areas. What policies will you support to improve education, not just in South Carolina, but across the country?
I think foundationally, we need to all get back to our shared value that we believe every child in this country deserves access to a high quality public education, regardless of the zip code into which they were born. I think we have to say Ellen Weaver is a disaster as our state superintendent, and also vouchers are a scheme to funnel public money into the hands of private school owners and private school administrators. The last thing we need to be doing is funneling our public tax dollars away from our public schools, many of which need far more funding, into private schools. And, the amount that these vouchers would cover would never allow a family who's actually struggling to make ends meet enroll in a private school, because the amount of money that these vouchers offer won't cover the tuition. So, I'm a daughter of a teacher. I am a proud parent of 3 South Carolina public school students. And I remember when I was running for Congress in 2022, there were not an infrequent number of events where I would walk in and either the catering staff or the bar staff would be teachers working their second job. And that is an indictment on what this state and what this country values, because you have to follow the money. And if we're not willing to invest appropriately in our public education system, then that means we don't give a damn about our kids. And so we need fully funded public education. We need to raise teacher pay. We need to stop this voucher scheme nonsense that, our Senator Tim Scott is like a lead cheerleader for. And we need to get the culture wars out of the classroom. We need to let teachers do their job that they were trained to do.
So you mentioned the culture wars. How do you convey the message of not just policy, but the fact that Republicans created this mess, and take that to Lindsey Graham and not get off track with, like we talked about, the constant toxicity of the current political environment?
I mean, it's not an easy task that we ask any candidate to do. The Republicans are really good about trying to control the narrative, define who we are as a party, define, what we prioritize. And far too often as a party and as elected Democrats and Democrats running for office, we catch ourselves on defense. And I think I did a little bit of this in my last campaign, when Nancy Mace, proud bigot and transphobe, attacked me recurrently as a child abuser for supporting gender affirming care in youth. Every moment I spent defending that position that I have as a child healthcare professional and a parent and a human being with empathy was a moment that worked well for her politically. So as Democrats, we have to be smarter about avoiding that culture war conversation, because people in South Carolina have real problems and they need us to be talking about solutions to those problems. But we also have to somehow achieve this balance of reminding people how terrible Lindsey Graham is and why he doesn't deserve yet another term in the U.S. Senate, but bringing that message of hope and optimism. So it's not an easy balance. And I find myself reflecting after I've given a talk, did I spend too much time talking about how Lindsey Graham is so bad? Did I spend enough time talking about what I will do proactively when I'm elected? And, I'm learning as I go. I'm not a career politician. This is my second time, but I'm far from a pro, and I'm learning to find that balance. I do recognize that most folks in South Carolina know Lindsey Graham is bad, so I probably can spend less time talking about that and more talking about my hope for a better South Carolina.
Yeah, I feel like you struck the right note last night. If last night was any indication of, people want hope. Like, we have been stuck in this endless cycle of really fear, I guess, and not knowing what's going to happen. I would say from day to day, but from hour to hour, really, if you will. And so, I think you're right on track. You got a great message of hope, and I can appreciate that. But with that being said, and you deciding not to fall into the cultural war trap, and also not taking PAC money, which I think is something that a lot of candidates are starting not to do anymore. How does that independence kind of shape the way you decide what legislation you're going to support, and how will you engage with your constituents post-election, since they are really the ones funding your campaign?
Yeah. I got a really similar question when I was at the Sumter County Party meeting a week or so ago. I think to get at the root of so many of our problems in politics, we have to get out at the root of corruption. Why Lindsey Graham gutted Medicaid is so he could keep his billionaire and corporate donors happy. So corruption is at the root of everything they're doing that's harming South Carolinians. And there are some systemic ways to change the system so it tolerates less corruption. And one of those things is getting, corporate PAC money out of politics. It's ending Citizens United, which we'll never be able to do if Democrats don't figure out how to win more elections. I also, as a younger person in politics, someone who has a different career to go back to, I believe in term limits. I will term limit myself to 2 terms in the U.S. Senate. And I think another root of corruption, and it's something that motivates people to run for office, not for the right reasons, is, enriching yourself while you're in office. So we need to ban members of Congress from trading stock. And a lot of that will, I think, decrease the amount of corruption the system can tolerate. I made a personal decision not to take corporate PAC money, although I know the other side is taking it. So is that a smart move for Democrats? I don't know. I don't think that if Big Pharma writes me a check, it's going to change one thing I believe about how our healthcare system should become more patient-centered and less pharmaceutical and insurance company-centered. But I have taken the no corporate PAC money pledge. The other amazing thing about being a Democrat in a red state is there's no one in Washington, D.C. telling me what to say right now. I'm running a campaign based on why I'm running, my own personal values and priorities. And I hope that comes through in any audience I'm talking to. And that won't change because I'm not in this to become some career politician. I think I said this last night, being a pediatrician is probably there's probably a much higher job satisfaction rate in pediatrics than there is in working in the US Senate, although both you're dealing with children and tantrums and immature people. But, I will maintain, I will be up there to fight for South Carolina, no matter who it pisses off, no matter who it makes happy. I will work with anyone who will work with me to better the lives of South Carolinians. And because I'm not on this to build this career trajectory for myself, I'm going to take stands that might make me unpopular, that might create enemies for me. But if it's for the betterment of South Carolina, that's what I'm up there to do. Like you just said, y'all are the ones who are going to pay my salaries. The talking to people like we did last night, that's the fun part. The fun part is not the committee hearings in Washington, D.C. The fun part, I don't want to be a senator anymore.
Absolutely. I think Lindsey Graham said that he didn't need to hold town halls because he knew what we wanted, or he was going to serve Trump. I think he said that last night. And so I think it would be a breath of fresh air, really, for all South Carolinians if we actually had a senator that actually cared about what we had to say and how we're feeling and how the times change. I think William Timmons said the same thing because he was like, well, I got voted back in, so clearly I know what they want, as if people can't change their minds. So...
Right.
So I think it's great that you would be willing to come back and do town halls and talk to constituents, because it's something I believe that is truly missing in politics right now. Charles, did you?
So my question would be based on something you just said, which is Democrats need to win more races. What is your opinion on kind of the inconsistent Democratic messaging across the country? And what do you feel like is the best way for the Democratic Party as a whole to move forward and seize on the clear momentum of winning all these special elections, right? Like you mentioned the state Senate seat in Iowa, where there was a 20% swing in that district and broke the supermajority that the GOP held in that state. What do you feel like is the best way for the party as a whole to move forward? And how does that influence your platform and your own messaging in this race?
That's a great question. I think it's a lot of things. I think we need party leadership and, DC consultants who will listen a little more and talk a little less. Democrats upsetting and having upset victories. We need to pay attention and see what happened. How did that work? What's unique about this candidate? What was this candidate's strength? How did they message? Where did they message? I think, just like the other party, sometimes we have leadership that isn't willing to pass the baton and isn't willing to, I face the same thing in academic medicine. It's once you're in that leadership position, you really don't want to give it up. And so you're not really lifting as you climb, and you're not passing the mic or the baton when we have we have a deep, deep bench across this country of young Democratic leaders. And I think we need to do more to lift them up, to give them the microphone and give them the platform to grow into the kind of leaders this country needs right now. I also think, we're stuck in our old patterns of the way we spend our campaign money, how much of it goes on TV, who still watches TV, how much of it goes on digital. So many of our candidates kind of use the old playbook, which we know hasn't worked, and don't rethink how to do things. And also, we need to meet people where they are. And those of you here know that that's social media. I think people think I'm maybe a less serious candidate because I take social media really seriously, but nothing could be further from the truth. I understand that's where people are. I just show who I am and talk about why I'm fighting and what I'm fighting for. And I think people are really hungry for leaders like that. So we have to meet people where they are. The Democrats as a whole need to get better and be more nimble and more creative and more authentic on social media. We need to go to parts of the country, specifically parts of South Carolina, where voters feel abandoned and disaffected because no one's knocked on their door in a really long time. And we need to show up and we need to tell them who we are as Democrats and what we'll fight for. We need to be proud of who we are. And I touched on this last night. I am a really proud Democrat because of what we stand for, who we fight for, and what we fight for. But we're losing the PR war and the messaging war. And so we've got to bring more voices into leadership positions to figure that out, because we'll never be able to help people if we don't win elections.
Yeah, I see that you've made your message really digestible for young people. It's not the over the top, like you said, in a suit and blazer, giving a long speech. You're doing these 30 seconds to a minute TikToks, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And, really trying to find a way to identify with the younger crowd.
Mhm.
And so I think the other thing that you mentioned that I appreciated was that you still get in front of people, though. In that vein, can you just tell us like how you plan to use social media a little bit more when you're doing all of this? Because I know what I see, but I'd like to
Mhm.
see, know your strategy behind that,
Yeah.
if you're willing to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've surrounded myself with people who believe in me as a whole human being and understand that I'm not going to be one of those candidates who, when I'm told to be quiet, stays quiet, or when I'm told to redirect, redirects. I'm all ears for people who have expertise that I don't have, campaign knowledge that I don't have. I'm not trying to say I'm stubborn, but I'm so just forthright in why I'm doing this. And so I think the social media piece will always be a really important part of this campaign, because it's how, honestly, like my Instagram is how we got that many butts in seats last night. That is the name of the game right now. And then once those butts are in the seats, we need someone who can compel them to feel excited and passionate and hopeful. And that's like the magic recipe, I think, to how we're going to finally turn the tide. I mean, Lillian Brock Fleming was talking about, we have enough Democratic votes in the state. They just don't, they feel abandoned. They feel that they haven't been listened to. And so, this is how we can win elections statewide in South Carolina, but we've got to be meeting people everywhere. And, I enjoy the social media aspect of it. I find it a really effective way to bring party meeting, but they found me on social media because, they thought I was like a mom just like them. And then it brings them in. And that's exactly how we like widen the tent. That's how we get more volunteers on our local races and on our statewide races. And that's how we start winning elections. And so we've got to present ourselves as whole human beings in every way. And for me, a big part of that is reaching people on social media. And so, I'm on all platforms now. I take all the advice I can on TikTok because I'm newer to that platform. Instagram is like a really safe space for like a middle-aged mom, suburban mom like me, but I'm pushing myself again outside of my boundaries to get better on TikTok. But I'm going to stay really active. I've created some really great communities on there. And that goes back to my days as a Moms Demand Action volunteer. So I enjoy that part of it. Like you said, though, Stacey, like I'm still going to be crisscrossing this state and be everywhere I humanly possibly can as a working mom of 3 kids. But, I hope folks see me out there putting miles on my car, getting to every corner of this state. And you're just going to see more of that as we get closer and closer to the June primary election.
Dr. Andrews, it is certainly refreshing to have candidates who are, like you say, willing to meet people where they are, which in my generation is on social media, and letting go of that old playbook of ignoring younger voters. And one thing you mentioned just now was widening the tent. The Democratic Party is traditionally the big tent party, the People's Party, the party of working families. And right now, the biggest issue among working families is the economy. So how would you address economic disparities that affect working families, like skyrocketing housing costs, skyrocketing childcare costs, food costs? Everything just seems to cost more, and people are struggling more and more every day.
Yeah, the pinch is getting stronger every day for families, not just living, in true poverty, but families in, those working class middle families. It's wages have not kept up with the rising prices. And now with the economic uncertainty and instability we have, because we've got a bunch of children running our federal government right now, it's made so many things worse. I've talked to so many folks who work for big national companies, but live here in South Carolina, and they're, suffering from layoffs because, folks who manufacture things, they get all those parts from overseas, and the tariffs are making these companies, reevaluate how many things they can build this year. And that, of course, affects how many people they can employ. So we really need serious people in the room when it comes to developing and, integrating economic policy that works for working families. And you highlighted all the things that cost families money. It's housing. We need more affordable housing. You all are in Greenville. I live down here in the Low Country, where we've seen explosive growth. And, there's so many people who work in downtown Charleston, but can't afford to live anywhere near downtown Charleston because we haven't gotten serious about building enough affordable housing. So we need to get serious about affordable housing solutions. A lot of that is at the state level, county level, city level, but there are some federal solutions as well. Grocery prices. I do the grocery shopping for my family most of the time, and I continue to see prices rise. And a lot of that is due, again, to the economic uncertainty post-COVID-19 pandemic and, Trump just playing games with tariffs. And it's really hurting our farmers and, our business owners and our workers. And then childcare costs. There are really clear policy solutions to making childcare more accessible and affordable. But right now, running a childcare business is not a business that makes money. It's not profitable. So we don't have enough childcare centers in the state because it's really hard to make ends meet if that is your business. And there's ways that the federal and state government can subsidize childcare. There's ways that like Medicaid could subsidize childcare. We could treat childcare like we treat kindergarten through 8th grade and just make it universal. But, working families, it's so hard for moms to go back to work because their childcare costs more than their paycheck. So why would you go back to work? South Carolina cannot continue on this trajectory because we need people in the workforce. We need a tax base. We need families to be able to go back to work, but they'll never be able to do that if we don't get serious about addressing the childcare crisis. And it's yet another example of something where we know the answers. We just don't have enough leaders who care enough because we don't have enough moms in office. We don't have enough, folks who come from working family, middle class backgrounds in office. Because to them, this is all just a game with their billionaire buddies.
That's the truth. That is so the truth. And we are coming to the end of our time. We told you we wouldn't keep you too long. But before you go, tell people how they can get involved with your campaign.
Yes, thank you so much. So go to drannieandrews.com and you can read a little bit more about me. We'll be expanding our website as we move forward in this election cycle with our, full policy platform, et cetera. So go back to the website to check that out as things evolve. But on the website, you can make donations because, Lindsey Graham has $15 million in the bank. And if we want to run a real effective campaign that includes that ground operation in every county in this state and the paid media, so I'm on TV defining who I am, not letting Lindsey Graham define who I am, then I need donations, and every dollar counts. So even if it's like a $5 monthly recurring donation, that is incredibly helpful to our campaign. Also on the website, you can sign up to be in our volunteer database. And we're starting to engage our volunteers more because they are eager to come out and help. We're 15 months from the general election and, 10 months from the primary. So I don't need folks knocking doors for me right now. But we talked about this last night. We do need folks knocking doors for Lillian Brock Fleming and Catherine Harvey and Tina Belgi and others who are running. So we're going to redirect some of our volunteers to some of these local races. So sign up on our website and we will tell you where folks across the state need you. And we're also going to be using our volunteers to work on some voter registration efforts, because back to what we were talking about before, there's enough voters in this state to kick Lindsey Graham out of the Senate. We just need to get them engaged. We need to get them registered, and then we need to get them to the polls on election day. So lots of ways you can help. Follow me along on social media, share my content so that folks in your network see it who might not already be following along. And this can be a hopeful 15 months. It can be a hopeful 10 months until the primary, a hopeful 15 months until the general, if we all work on this together. And what would bring us more joy than to make the next 15 months of Lindsey Graham's life pretty miserable?
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I'd love to make him miserable. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Andrews. We really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. Charles, I've enjoyed it. I can't speak for Charles, but I have. So,
well, I can say as a county party officer, we certainly appreciate how much you have talked about the importance of local races. That is huge. So thank you. And thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and let's do it again some other time on the trail.
Absolutely. We'd love
Thanks
to.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Greenville County Democratic Party appreciates your time listening and or watching. Please join us at future events. You can find out about them at multiple locations, including the GCDP website, greenvilledemocrats.com, and browse the events calendar. Or you can find us on multiple social media platforms shown here. Thanks again for listening. Now let's get out there and do what we can to rebuild our government into one that serves all of us.